Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to today's session as part of the Lancashire Innovation Festival. Today we're discussing Skilling Lancashire for a Manufacturing Future. My name's Claire Whelan, I'm the Deputy Chair of the Innovation Board, and my day job is running a group of manufacturing companies in Burnley employing nearly 300 people. I'm really pleased to be joined today by my fellow board member Judson Smythe. Judson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Claire. Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name is Judson Smythe. I'm the Technical Director at MGS Technical Plastics, and very pleased today to be discussing the important topic of skilling for Lancashire.
Thanks. So as a bit of a kick-off, we're having a fireside chat today.
Yeah.
We're both on the Innovation Board, we both work in manufacturing. What brought you into manufacturing in the first place?
It's a bit of a strange story. I was looking to go into university after school, and I got to a point where I was thinking to myself, what am I actually going to do with this qualification? And spoke to, at the time, my father and said, you know, is there something else that I could do? We went through the various trades and other options that were available, and eventually I went to the Toyota manufacturing plant, and I was entirely taken immediately. I realized that I wanted to do an apprenticeship in some sort of a manufacturing trade, and ended up choosing tool making and sort of following through from there. My career has then taken me sort of away from the bench, but still within the manufacturing industry. And again, I now work as a technical director in a plastics manufacturing company.
Yeah, and I guess just to reciprocate that story, I fell into this industry sector and went on a very different career path, and now I've found it, you know, I really love it. There's something tangible that we do every day, and I think as a young person I didn't really appreciate how many different career paths there are and how many skill sets you can choose, whether it's actually making goods and products or whether it's the supporting activities around it. So, you know, why should people, young people, consider skilling in a manufacturing and choosing that career path, I guess would be my next question to you.
And a fantastic question indeed. It's I think the magical thing about manufacturing is that it's a very low barrier to entry. So you can start off as a machine operative or as an apprentice, and further from there you can continue to work hard and work your way up, taking advantage of the multitude of skills and training programs that manufacturing businesses offer. And then, you know, I think the ladders that are available to you are much higher, and you can climb much higher than a lot of other industries or similar industries, and continue to upskill yourself within that industry. As I said, I started out as an apprentice and I'm now a technical director. That's all credit to the manufacturing industry.
So I guess we're all, we see a value in it, but at the same time we're all suffering with a skills gap at the moment as a region and as a country. You know, what you've highlighted there is that we need to start as soon as possible really in people's career paths to attract them to manufacturing, and you look at what other countries do around the world. I always have the feeling that maybe we've got it wrong along the way sometimes, that manufacturing could be pushed more as a career, particularly to women as well and young people. But why should companies be concerned with the skills and this topic today? Why do we need to address this?
I think you know, all businesses need people, and they need people with the right attitudes. Gone are the days where we can sort of rely on manufacturing taking the scraps. We need to be attracting the brightest young potential out there, and upskilling them, giving them every opportunity to upskill within the industry, and really showing them that manufacturing is actually a sexy industry to be in. You know, it's fantastic. There's Industry 4.0 technology, there's machines, there's robotics, there's all sorts of fantastic things that you can dig into, get to know, learn, and start to use. And as you say, make something tangible at the end of the day, have a concrete contribution to society.
And it's come a long way, right? Manufacturing doesn't look the same as it did 100 years ago. And I know, you know, some of the things that you've done, and if you wouldn't mind sharing kind of some of the equipment that you've bought recently in recognition of what people are growing up with, because society's changed, manufacturing's changed, technology's changed. You've recently bought some different type of machinery, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We bought in some new machines, and when we looked at them, we decided to add the robotics on straight away. We decided to add the sort of bigger screens. We added the Industry 4.0 technology so that we can, from our mobile phones, access and see what our machine's doing, what data it's generating for us in terms of energy consumption, in terms of productivity, all those sorts of things. And I think as a young person interested in technology, that's a really attractive thing to go into and learn. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I was questioning myself on is that why should companies really be bothered about this? We can see that it's changed, we think that it's more attractive. How can you tangibly make a difference as a company to your workforce in upskilling?
I think by upskilling as a business owner or a group of companies like yourselves, what you're doing is you're ultimately offering a few different sort of pillars of strength for the business. The one is that obviously as a business you're able to maintain yourself, continue making or providing the product or service that you are dealing with. The other is obviously increasing your productivity by creating or bridging the skills gap. You bringing people in that are going to be more productive and get more out the door at the end of the day. So yeah, I think it's fundamental, and then the end result is that you benefit Lancashire by growing that pool of skill around us. And we might poach from one another. You might see that I've brought somebody up who's a brilliant young lady or young man and think, oh, I'll have a bit of that. But the thing is that I'll be training the next person and you'll be training the next person. So and we create a pool to access.
So what we're saying here is that we tackle that by training apprenticeships. I know from our own point of view, COVID aside, we've managed to continue with apprenticeships because we really see a value in that and bringing the next generation through. I think we understand that there's an ageing engineering population, there's a change in technology, so what do we need to do? We need to tackle it at the younger end of things and carry on bringing the apprentices through. And like you say, maybe they move around, but we're continuing to bring that talent pool through each other's businesses, really.
Definitely.
And I guess we've got the benefit, sitting on the Lancashire board, that there's been a lot of work conducted on the innovation as a topic for Lancashire, and we know that Lancashire needs to do something about this because of the productivity gap. We need to increase our GDP, and it's ultimately going to be by driving that productivity gap, and innovation's part of that solution. And my opinion on this as well is that, given the context of where we are today with COVID, the issue is actually not improved. It's got all the more important for us to tackle this. It hasn't weakened at all. It's just made it worse, if anything. And you turn on the news, there's shortages, there's fuel shortages, Brexit, COVID. It's something, skills is running right through each of those topics, and ultimately the most important it's ever been, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's this big drive of bringing manufacturing home, and that's fantastic, but you need a few things to be able to do that efficiently and effectively. One of them is to address that productivity gap. That gap is twofold, obviously, as we know. In our work on the Lancashire Innovation Board, we see that the gap is first and foremost between the UK and our brethren across the pond on the mainland in Europe. And then for Lancashire in particular, it's even lower as a percentage within the UK itself. Yeah. So we've got two jobs to do. First of all, to get ourselves up to the level of the UK, and then to get ourselves as a country or as a group of countries up to the level that Europe are at and beyond. So we need to be doing that first and foremost. And then I think I think I lost the second part of the question there, to be honest.
So really, what can we do really to close that productivity gap? Because there's different ways of tackling that, isn't there? The skills are part of that because we're upskilling and we're providing people to that. Robotics, digital, industry 4.0.
Yeah.
I think there might be a misconception as well that, robotics solve the world, and that's not the case, is it?
No, not at all. I think when robotics started entering manufacturing in particular, there was a sort of, I was a tradesman at the time, and there was a thing that, they're going to take our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the case. What it's done is it's changed the jobs, and it's made them for the better. I heard somebody saying earlier they've replaced the boiler suit with a suit, and that's quite spot on. The need is different. The jobs are still there. Although we're not having somebody packing a box, we now have an engineer driving a robot that packs a box. So again, upskilling, getting those right skills and getting yourself ready as a business, then we're going to be able to take on those productivity gaps.
Yeah, ultimately that closes the gap. We're able to do more, we're able to increase our GDP, and we're better as a region for it.
Too right.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. Last year's Innovation Festival, we both touched on the topic of innovation and skills, and the fact that it is such a broad topic. What does innovation in the context of skills mean to yourself?
I really like the topic of innovation, but the one thing that I always say to people is just look at it smaller. I think people wake up some days and think, well, you're either Steve Jobs or you're nothing. And that's not the case. You can be working on small innovations, and they don't have to be major changes. If you look back, we didn't immediately as a species invent the automobile. We learned how to shape wood. We then shaped a wheel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Things happen slowly and incrementally. So I've often said it, I think there's value in the incremental compounding innovations. And if we do things as businesses differently every day, and then tomorrow do one thing better than that, we will continue to innovate. The business that I work in recently tried to go sort of more toward the Industry 4.0 side of things, installing machine monitoring software. So we're able from anywhere in the country, around the world, to be able to see what our machines are doing at any one time, which really, as a start point, is great for our customers because they know that we're in control of our products and processes. But again, for bringing in that young talent, they're looking up and they're seeing screens on the walls. They're seeing people looking at machines on their mobile phones. That's interesting in today's day and age.
They've grown up with that technology, and we need to adapt to what those youngsters are familiar with, because we're going to be old hat in a few years. So, they're going to know more than we are in terms of that.
Absolutely. We're asking people to put down the PlayStation control and come to an old sweating mill building. It doesn't work. It's got to be attractive. It's got to be interesting.
So we need to keep up with the pace. Yeah, I get that.
Very much so.
I mean, one of the things that we've done last year is reset our company values, and we actually created innovation as a value. Probably partly influenced by the work that we're doing on the innovation board. That's probably one of the reasons I did it, to be honest, because I saw that innovation is such a broad topic that we need to start breaking it down and making it more tangible for people and our employees. It's this lofty word, and then what do you do with that? So innovation as a value, quite simply, some of the things that we do is recognise people, departments for little parts of innovation. It could be a small idea, it can be a big idea, but just those little business improvements which are closing our own productivity gaps and making us better, making those improvements. And we do also have our own automation robotics company in the group. So we're saying to people, it isn't all about that. That's great, we can use that technology where appropriate, but you make an improvement to your process, coming to work and finding a different way of doing things is all part of helping the problem and those incremental changes that you talked about. So, complete agreement on that.
Yeah.
So I guess if you were sitting here today and you're watching us talk by the fireside and you're thinking, right, how do I contribute to this? I'm an SME, I've got a lot on, we're hopefully post-COVID. What can I do today to make a difference to upskilling my organisation? What would you say to someone?
For me, it's exactly what we are implementing in our business at the moment. We try to promote within when we have a gap in our skills. By doing so, we find people with the right attitude. It's one thing to train, but you want to train people who want the training. And as an SME, I think we have a responsibility to Lancashire to be training people and sort of fostering that skill pool. And I think if all businesses, we've got some fantastic OEMs in England and the wider UK. If all businesses are doing their part, sort of relative to the size and scale of what they can do, then in years to come there won't be a skills shortage. And in years to come we will address that productivity gap. The data is clear. What you put in, you get out. And I think that's what we all need to be doing.
Because funding comes up quite a bit in these discussions as well, doesn't it? Whether it's apprenticeship funding, whether it's capital funding, they all link back to people and skills at the end of the day and what we want to do. And I think that's been put across as a barrier in the past, but really, if I'm hearing what you're saying, it's make it appropriate to the size of your business. Just try and understand your own people, your own gaps, and do small incremental changes to do that. We can't all put a robotics line in. Yeah. We get that. We can't all send everyone on training, and we're in the middle of a pandemic and a fuel shortage and everything else.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
There's a lot to do, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm hearing what you're saying, it's basically everyone needs to take their own little piece of what upskilling means to them, and try and make things better for each other.
Definitely.
Yeah. Great.
And I think if we put it off, the problems that we are using to justify putting it off will be greater tomorrow than they are today.
Yeah.
So, don't waste time. Just get involved. Do what you can do. If it's one apprentice, if it's 100, great. But, that's not realistic for many businesses.
Yeah. That's why I was raising the funding thing, because I think that's come up quite a few times. But, we've got great colleges, great education providers in Lancashire. I think the courses have really improved in the last couple of years, and we've seen more apprenticeship uptake.
Yeah.
So we should take some positivity from that, despite everything going on, and say, we should be getting a good set of people coming through now.
Very much so. I should mention that I'm actually doing a degree apprenticeship at the moment.
Well done. What in?
Leadership.
Great.
Yeah. So it's I'm sort of trying to practice what I preach as well.
Yeah. Another twist in the career for you there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for having this discussion with me. I'm going to check if we've got any questions from the audience today.
Yeah, so one question that's coming is how good are manufacturers at engaging young people for career opportunities? How could they do better, and what companies do you think do it well at the moment?
If I start that one off and maybe give you time to think as well. I think, what me and Judson have just discussed is that manufacturing is kind of changing. We've tended to engage on a level of understanding as what manufacturing was, and one of the things that I would say is that we need to be a bit more appropriate to what it is today. So, making it attractive for young people to join it as an industry. Maybe showing them all the other surrounding careers. If I take my own career progress, that hasn't been down a traditional route, and that doesn't matter. And maybe promoting what Judson said earlier, that there's quite a low barrier to entry, and that should be a really attractive thing, because it means it's a good career path. There's so many different avenues you can take in manufacturing, so many different skills. There's emerging technologies coming through that you can learn. There's established technologies, there's digital technologies, there's Industry 4. You name it, it is really limitless.
Absolutely. I think when you look at it from that early stages, there's sort of two paths you can take. You can take the traditional university road, which is fantastic. If you are fortunate enough to be able to do that in terms of your marks, your financial situation, etc. But if you aren't, and you're looking for a suitable alternative, the manufacturing industry is a fantastic industry to get into. I think also there's a place to engage with universities to get the people who are coming out of it to come and look into manufacturing. Talking to engineering departments at your local university, for example, is a fantastic way of getting the brightest of the crop coming across to you. I do think there's probably more that we can do as an industry to attract young people.
Yeah.
We aren't on Instagram feeds, we aren't on, I don't know, Snapchat feeds, etc. And that's probably a problem for us, but that we have to be mature about to go, well, what are we doing about putting somebody in, addressing our social media, etc., trying to get them to our door.
I think part of the issue is that the larger companies do tend to do it quite well. Obviously, we all know BAE, etc. They're a fantastic organisation, and anyone could get a really good career there. I guess we've got to engage with youngsters and also those education providers to ensure that we're getting a feed of the talent that's coming through and making our companies attractive to everyone out there.
Very much so. I mean, we do a bit of work with Blackburn College, and we take work experience candidates in on an annual basis. And I think 2 of our current employees, I might be wrong on that, but definitely one in our maintenance department came through that avenue. He came and he was a good lad, and we said to him, look, when you're finished, come back and you can have a job here.
Yeah, and then you grow your own talent base, so it's perfect from a company point of view as well, that you get that loyalty and that good workforce. So yeah, great.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we've answered that. Any more?
Yeah, and I think you've also answered some of the next question as well, which was around how we can get young people to stay in the region. Some great training organisations and the universities here, so actually getting them to stay in the region after that, which I think you answered some of there.
Yeah, but I do think there is an addition to that. And ironically, I think the pandemic has given us a bit of an opportunity there, that we were previously seeing a lot of people leave the region to maybe the bigger cities, going down south, particularly in technology careers. But, we've all had to adapt very, very quickly to a digital world. And that's meant that, it's blown the doors open in terms of careers and recruitment and everything, that really you can do your job from other places in the world. And Lancashire's got some great assets. It's got beautiful countryside, it's got great places to actually socialise, it is attractive to a young person, great road networks. You and I scale the country regularly, and we manage to do it fairly effectively, I think.
Absolutely.
So I think that Lancashire should be a real consideration, and I guess that's the other work of the Innovation Board and the wider LEP, to make sure that people do get that message and they see Lancashire for what it truly is. Very
much so. I mean, I moved here from South Africa and I haven't left, so it's got to have something that's attractive. What
attracted you then?
Well, I just knew that the Northwest was sort of the heart of manufacturing when it came to the early days, cotton industry, etc. And moving across, I thought, well, what better place to go and sort of pursue a manufacturing career than the Northwest of England. I agree with you entirely about the countryside, etc. I mean, you got the Lake District, etc., which is area of outstanding natural beauty. I'm across the road from moorlands and things like that, so yeah, you can get yourself stuck into some manufacturing work during the day, which is really technologically advanced work, and then in the afternoon take a peaceful walk in the countryside. What better place to live? Yeah, exactly. I think that says it all, that you moved across and now you're in Lancashire. I think that's all we need to say there. I haven't got the accent yet, but I'll hopefully get there one day.
We'll get there.
Great. Another question that's come in: how would you tackle cultural barriers in your business when it comes to training and the implementation of digital systems?
That's a good one.
That's a difficult one, because I'm unsure particularly which sort of area of cultural barriers we'll be talking about. I do speak quite often about trying to get more females into manufacturing. When you look at productivity in the home, it's clear to see where that comes from most of the time, and then we get into the factory environment and it's a male-dominated area. Let's address that issue.
Just add, we've had follow-up on that, specifically looking at resistance to change as we bring in sort of new, more digital state-of-the-art systems, tackling that resistance to change from people already in the business?
Yeah, and it's, you know, particularly in some of the more established industry sectors, that is a recognised issue, I think, because you know, someone's been doing the job one way all their life, and you suddenly come in and say, we're going to give you a computer now and do this and do that, and it doesn't necessarily work, and I don't think we should pretend that there's a solution necessarily for that.
Yeah.
You know, digital, new technologies, new materials, that's new, so you do it from day one, don't you?
Yeah.
But training, I guess, has got to be a thing there, and explaining what it's going to do for the business and in turn for careers in Lancashire, the wider picture.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think those old cultural norms need to be stamped out. You know, I've been doing it like this for 30 years. That means you've been doing it wrong for 30 years, perhaps. You know what I mean? You need to change. That's the only thing is change. So I do think that we need to be addressing the cultural barriers that I think we see in the industry. But I do feel also that a lot of manufacturing businesses are looking at that intently. I know the Lancashire Innovation Board certainly are. We had a nice address the other day about that. And yeah, I think if everyone's just doing their bit to try and coach their employees who are perhaps stuck in the past and attract new employees from a more diverse base, then we should be on a good stand to address that in the future.
I think the fact that we're having a skills issue actually forces the issue for
Too
us,
right.
because we can't be blinkered to the old ways. So, you know, our employees, our peers, they all see that we're living that issue right now, and again, it's an opportunity, and we see that as a board as an opportunity to bring people along with innovation and to improve what we're doing. So rather than seeing it as a weakness, you know, we see that as an opportunity to grow and develop and change for a new future. Yeah,
I mean, they say two heads are better than one, or what's better than 2 points of view, you know. So definitely diversify in the workplace if you can.
How easy would you say it is for people to transfer from other industries into manufacturing, and specifically looking at skills, how they can transfer their skills that they have already and apply those to manufacturing roles?
We've actually been talking about this recently in our own business, actually, because we've got a skills shortage, and we've been thinking, you know, how do we retain staff and how do we attract people that haven't necessarily considered our industry sector? I fell into this, other people did. So, you know, there's a pool of candidates that we're not even tapping into.
Very much
and
so.
Part of that is the cultural differences, that we can try and attract people from other backgrounds, people that candidate pools that we've never tapped into before. But, you know, there's other industries that are really similar, and the skill sets do transfer. It might not necessarily be transferred on the actual operation that you're doing, but you know, the practicalities of it, the accuracy, the technology, we're all could be using similar things.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a personal example of that. My sister is a school teacher, and she came to me saying she's thinking about, you know, changing tack. And I said to her, you would make a fantastic quality manager in a manufacturing business. You've got an eye for detail, you're organised, you know, don't take no for an answer. You'd be fantastic. So I think there are transferable skills in most areas. You know, you're purchasing, you're project management, you're something like that. And those skills are all needed in our business.
I guess, would your sister have found that without you prompting?
Probably not.
Maybe the issue that we need to tackle, to say, you guys that have never thought about this, why don't you try this industry sector, because it gives you all these different things, and you know, the wages competitive, and is that competitive to teaching? You know, it does bring in other kind of competing issues, doesn't it, with that? But yeah, absolutely, and we are looking at how we recruit from different sectors and train them up. Particularly, one of the things that we've just introduced is a new mature apprenticeship scheme, and that is tackling some of that, because it's taking people who have maybe tried the industry but actually now want to solidify the learning on the job, and that's again kind of solidifying them in our companies. And yeah, I think apprenticeship schemes and adult learning is another way of tackling that, to say, you don't know what else you want to do, try this way, try this route.
That's a fantastic initiative your company is undertaking.
I've had someone raise the question on the stream. Could people be reluctant to go into manufacturing because of a sort of old stigma of the industry being a sort of dirty place to work, very hands-on? Do you think that's an issue? And if so, how do you think we could tackle that?
I definitely think it's an issue. You know, if you drive past an old industrial estate, it doesn't look like an Apple building. You know, it doesn't have a slide going down to the canteen or something like that. It 100% is an issue. We personally are looking at how we try and make our workplace more attractive. You know, do we add in a breakout room, a coffee bar? You know, it seems like a small, subtle change, but it definitely is to try and bring the workplace in line with what everyone else is doing. I mean, we sat here in Strawberry Fields today, and it's a fantastic facility.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
But this looks very much like the inside of a manufacturing office nowadays. You know, so.
And, you know, we had a tour around our facilities yesterday, and the feedback's always like, oh, this is quite nice, yeah, and people are surprised by that.
Yeah.
And we recently did a FAQ to our workforce, and one of the things that came up was some of the facilities. So we were making, like you said, quite small changes, but makes it more comfortable for people. Maybe, you know, it's been quite a male, dirty industry by historic purposes. So we've been trying to make that more attractive to the females, make it a bit more comfortable, and, you know, open some of the doors there. But it is an issue, and, you know, our processes are our processes. They're not all clean.
No.
So, you know, we have to try and do what we can around them, I guess.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean you can't clean up at the end of the day.
Exactly,
you know.
yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think there's perhaps an added dimension to that with coronavirus and how we're now moving so that not everyone in manufacturing will be sitting in an office all day or even working on a production line, will they? There's now sort of a bit more scope. Do you think that may help or hinder the industry in terms of attracting people to the industry more?
Yeah, I mean, we've it's difficult because our processes on site need people on site to deliver them, and we found that quite difficult during the pandemic. That, you know, a lot of industries completely working from home, sold their office space, etc., and we couldn't do that. But actually, being back on site has been great, and most people have wanted to do that. What it does give, I guess, is flexibility for you to attract different talent should you want to or need to.
Very much so.
That's the way that we viewed it. How about you?
It was much the same for us. We stayed open throughout the lockdown. We were developing new products, and you know, I was talking earlier and saying I was running up and down motorways when I was the only vehicle on the motorway getting prototypes made and things like that. But I was doing sort of 90% of my work remotely, managing all of the programs and things that I had running at the time. But unfortunately, there's an element that has to be done at the rock face, and that's just manufacturing. Some people will find that incredibly exciting, and, you know, for those people, I implore them to come and look into manufacturing.
So it could be both a help and a hindrance. There'll be people who think, I want to work at home now. I like the flexibility. I don't necessarily want to be there on a shift, on a machine. I want to do something else. But on the flip side, I think people have valued having that contact and being in the workplace and having relationships. And so I guess you could answer that question both ways.
I think as sort of business leaders, we have a responsibility to assess the trends and sort of see what people are wanting as well, and perhaps offer some remote working where the job allows it.
Yeah, and I think that really nicely kind of rounds the session up, because, you know, we're talking about being adaptable to the needs of Lancashire, and making sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we keep the skill here and developing. So I think that nicely rounds it up, and thanks everyone for all your questions that have come in today. They've been really interesting. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.